Good morning, everyone. My name is Wesley Leon, and today I'll be evaluating the efficacy and ethical implications of the United States economic sanctions. Firstly, what are economic sanctions? According to Matthias Neuenkirch, a professor of economics, sanctions are measures taken by countries or groups of countries designed to inflict economic damage on a targeted state to coerce compliance. According to Dursa and Penske, a professor of political science, the United States views these sanctions as through the perspective of removing essential economic resources from a targeted state, increasing opposition and frustration towards the target government, and using that as pressure into coercion. These economic sanctions can include restrictions on financial transactions, restrictions on trade, as well as even full embargoes. According to Gabriel Friebenmeier, who is the director of the Austrian Institute for Economic Research, there has been an increase of usage of economic sanctions, as seen by the right side of this graph of the increased positive slope of both new and already existing sanctions. These sanctions have been used more frequently due to them being easily drafted and implemented in even a few hours. Additionally, according to Tadeusz Pala, who is from the MU Faculty of Economics, these sanctions are often seen as an alternative to conventional warfare in terms of coercion. They're seen as a more humane method. And though they are more humane, there's still evident adverse effects on innocent civilians. According to medical researcher Dr. Ali Gorgi, there has been sanctions imposed on countries reduces access to essential medicine, medical resources, and medical services, and can even reduce access to food and water. This reduction in access increases infant mortality, increases under 5 mortality, and can even increase famine within a country. And despite all this damage that sanctions can cause, there is still, sanctions often fail to coerce change, failing 65 to 95% of the time. Which begs the question, should the US government continue to impose economic sanctions on foreign states to coerce policy changes? To better answer this question, it is vital to understand why economic sanctions are so ineffective using the political lens. Firstly, according to Dr. Fatma Kokbuza, who is a researcher focusing on the impact of sanctions, sanctions, when they're applied to countries that have a limited trade volume with the United States, it makes it difficult for the United States to cut off a significant amount of trade, making the sanctions less damaging. Secondly, according to Martin Smeets, who is a senior economist at the World Trade Organization, the longer sanctions are applied to states, the less vulnerable these states become, due to them being able to divert trade to less hostile countries. And though some states are able to divert the economic damage, most states are not able to, because they have leaders who are reluctant to change despite pressure from their own citizens or foreign governments, leading to great adverse effects on their, leading to great socioeconomic effects on their people and the economy. According to Dr. Maria Sarugi, who is a professor focusing on economics, sanctions, when they're applied to states, it disallows them from interacting with foreign economies. And when this happens, it devalues their national currency, reduces the income of their citizens, and can even reduce their purchasing power due to high inflation. Furthermore, according to Maciej Kozak, a professor of economics as well, he states that sanctions have a friendly fire effect associated with imposing them, because when sanctions decrease the amount of trade that can go to a targeted state, it also reduces trade that can go from the targeted state to the sanctioning state, in this case the United States, which can increase consumer prices, which contributes to this friendly fire effect. Now onto the ethical lens. Well, according to Pekskin, critics often argue that sanctions are immoral because they cause and leverage civilian suffering against the target government, even though these citizens are innocent and they're not all liable for their government actions. The United States willingly accepts this, and they still continue to impose sanctions. According to Ahmed Twaj, an award-winning journalist focusing on social justice, the former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, who's been celebrated by some of the most recent presidents, she stated in a 1996 interview that the death of 500,000 Iraqi children was worth the price after the United States put economic sanctions on them. This merciless stance emphasizes the United States perspective on using humans as disposable leverage despite it straying from the morals and ethics of the United States' commitment to making the world a better place. So to give additional clarity to answering this question, I decided to use the stimulus source Moral Courage and Intelligent Disobedience by Ted Thomas, who is the director of the Department of Command and Leadership of the U.S. Army Command. He describes moral courage as the ability to overcome shame and humiliation, to admit one's mistakes, reject evil conformity, and to denounce injustice. He further describes that this type of courage requires one to go against the status quo, to uphold their moral values, even if it might involve consequences or isolation for doing so. So by using the framework of moral courage, I'm able to have a clear picture of the position that no, the United States should not continue to impose economic sanctions on foreign states because it is greatly immoral to make citizens of a country face a lot of economic damage and social damage because of something that they didn't do, their government does. So by using moral courage, the United States would be accepting that their current and previous foreign policy actions were mostly ineffective at providing beneficial change. Secondly, by using moral courage, the United States would be backing out of a lot of these international agreements because sanctions are multilateral. At least most sanctions are multilateral. Denouncing evil conformity and accepting that the death of innocent individuals is a necessary evil. And thirdly, the United States would be practicing altruism, or the placing the well-being of innocent civilians over their political agendas, which can really help save millions of lives from deterioration. So by discontinuing sanctions, the United States will be losing their alternative coercive tool compared to conventional warfare. And this can lead to increased amounts of military interventions in the future, though this is still highly unlikely. And secondly, according to James Patterson, who is a professor of political science, sanctions are occasionally used to curb the human rights abuses throughout the world. However, by discontinuing sanctions, it can disallow the United States from being able to save these innocent individuals, perpetuating suffering. So in conclusion, the United States should discontinue imposing sanctions on foreign states to alleviate civilian suffering throughout the world. Thank you.
Ready for the oral defense?
Yeah.
Okay. What information did you need that you weren't able to find or locate?
So I wanted to find more information on how sanctions, or more specifically, what type of lack of resources affects sanctions the most. According to Dr. Ali Gorgi, a medical researcher, he found that sanctions in Iran killed 300,000 people due to reduced access to food, water, medicine, and medical services. However, he was unable to specify which one hurt the most amount of people because a lot of these countries, they don't want to seem like they're as weak as they are, and they face these repercussions. They want to look stronger, so they hide a lot of this information. So if I had this information, it could have changed how I created my resolution or my socioeconomic lens, because I'm able to analyze what affects citizens the most and how these sanctions can remove these essential goods.
How did you use the conclusions or questions of others to advance your own research?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Mm-hmm. So the question is, how did you use the conclusions or questions of others to advance your own research?
So, according to Dr. Penskin, who is a professor of political science, he found that the morality of economic sanctions are really debated due to them hurting a great amount of people, and he describes that the socioeconomic harm to these people is greatly unethical. So because of this, I decided to look more into why the United States would want to put sanctions on these people, even if it can lead to harm. And that involved greatly into my political lens, getting me to the conclusion of no, the United States should not continue economic sanctions.
Okay, you're done. Congratulations.